Live with Sue. I think this is our third time doing one with Sue. Beta! Hi, Beta! Yay! I think probably the most significant thing that Sue left me with last time that we worked with her, I don't know if you guys remember, she had this picture of the iceberg.
Yes, the iceberg. That was really good.
And what you see above is the child's behavior, but what's underneath is the reasons for the behavior. And that has never left me. Like, it could just be hungry. They're just hungry, or they didn't sleep enough, or X, Y, Z. And so really figuring out first, why is it happening, has been really significant for me.
Yes.
Yay. All right. Jackie already has some questions. Thank you, Jackie. And Sue is hopping on. She's having some technical difficulties. She's gonna get in her email again. So while we're waiting, Lindsay's gonna tell you, I'm putting her on the spot, her top tips that she's learned this year specifically with working with her kids. Let's give one. Yeah.
Okay. So with my son really getting on his level, and we are so much alike that oh wait, there's Sue.
Yay! Now she's the pressure's off.
Holy cow, that scared me.
Hi, Sue.
Yeah, I was in a meeting waiting. I don't know what happened, but let me just make sure I don't need to close that out.
Okay.
I think I'm good. Got too many windows open. Great to see you guys.
You
Great
too.
to see you.
Thank you for being here with us.
Sure. I know I'm a little, you catch me on one week and I'm like, yes, I'm coming.
Yeah.
On another week and it's just not good. So again, thank you for your patience and having me, and
Yay.
look forward to hearing all the questions and what people are struggling with.
Yes.
We're so grateful to have you on again. I think this is our third time, right?
It may be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were just talking before you came on about the iceberg and how significant that's been for me personally. It's figuring out what's underneath. And we'll attach that in the comments again, the image that you sent, because it's super powerful.
Very powerful.
Very powerful. Every parent should have that in their home. And it's not just for children. It's really about everybody. I mean, we're all behaving in ways that are communicating. So are we live now, by the way?
We are live.
Oh,
yes.
Hey, Facebook.
We already have a couple people watching and a couple questions, and then we had some people enter in a poll. So we have questions from that poll for you. And before we jump in, we of course want to know just a few minutes about you and your mission, please.
Okay. So my mission is really to change the world for children, how we raise children, how we see children, how we connect to children, so that children can grow and thrive in their own way, with their own spirits thriving, not us as parents guiding them in a way that we want them to thrive, but allowing their true nature to show up. And that's my goal. I work in a lot of indirect ways to do that. So I work with parents all over the world. I work with teachers all over the world. I work with people who are somehow or other in the life of a child, but I also work with corporations. So I do a lot of mindfulness work in corporations, helping corporate managers, executives to be more mindful in their work life, which then goes home with them to be more mindful in their life. So indirectly, that's affecting the family, the children, and everyone else connected. So, and I couldn't be more passionate, as you both, I think, know.
Yes. I think that was the most significant thing I found when I first read The Conscious Parent, is that it changed my whole perspective on all relationships, even the relationship with myself. So it's not just getting mindful with our children, it changes the whole spectrum of all, every interaction that you're having and what you're doing. So it's great work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sue, can you tell us, just for the people who may be new to conscious parenting, what is conscious parenting, or how you view it?
Sure. So conscious parenting is twofold, really. It's one, being able to see your child more clearly. So it's seeing the nature of the child, who the child is in front of you, what that child's strengths are, and looking at your parenting from that perspective. But it's also about the back end. It's looking at yourself and seeing what do you bring to parenting that is yours to own and yours to shift and yours to focus on. The hurts, the wounds, the baggage, all of our conditioning. It really weighs heavy when we become a parent. And that's when it shows up most strongly, is when we become a parent, then we're suddenly triggered by all of these things, usually from our own childhood or childhood wounds or the way we were raised. So you have to separate the noise within you and the noise outside of you, which is society at large, which tells us we need to raise our children in this way or in that way. This week alone, I've had many parents, many clients come to me with concerns about, in-laws. And I just posted a blog today about it, because it's not only society, but it's the people who are closest to us that are constantly commenting in some forums about the way we raise our children. So this seems to be a theme too. So the more we connect with our true values and who we truly are and show up to this, role of parenting in that way, connected fully with what we want to do and how we want to do it, then we're able to create more boundaries around the outside world. And of course, those in-laws, outlaws, whatever you want to call it. Siblings, parents. Yeah, excuse me, I'm just turning off I have a heater on. It's very cold where I am. So give me 1 second. Sorry.
I think with becoming a parent, that I noticed all of a sudden there was so much judgment. I've never before received so much feedback in the things that I must do and mustn't do. And a lot of it just conflicts with one another. So you really do have to hone in with your own intuition and what relates to your child, because every single child is just a human and each human is different.
Yeah. And I think one of the big powers of all that noise that you just described coming at us, you should do this, you must do this, is we start to doubt ourselves. And so a lot of my work is really helping people, parents, step into their worth, their value as a human being, doing the best they can every day and showing up for their families, for themselves, not for the rest of the world. So if we're trying to please all the other people, it's a no-win situation. So yeah, absolutely. It's all about, believing in yourself.
And it ultimately hurts the children. In the beginning, I was trying to do all these things that wasn't conducive to what the child needed.
Right.
And only we, the parents, who are really tapped in, know what our child needs.
Sure. Yeah, we have to tap into the wisdom that we have within us, knowing who our children are. No one else knows them like the parents.
Absolutely.
So I don't tell parents what to do as a coach. I help parents to tap into their own wisdom. And when they get quiet, they're able to see and hear and focus on what makes the most sense for that particular child. And if I could just share one thing, you mentioned we must do, I forget what the other word was that you said, but should, must, need to. Those words are very powerful words. And those words in my line of work and what I do with parents all over the world are not appropriate. So it's really important that you think about the language that you use with yourself and the language you hear from others, because there are no musts. I mean, we must get up at some point in time and we must go to bed at some point in time. And perhaps, nutrition has a role, and for our children as well, and perhaps some hygiene of sorts. But other than that, the must, you must do or you should. I have a lot of parents that should themselves. And just, I really recommend for all parents listening to really think about the language you use with yourself and how it feels when someone says something to you. If you hold that language and absorb it as your own, oh yeah, I must do this or I must do that, it's a no-win situation. You've been taken over by the aliens, so to speak. So let go of that language. Don't should yourself either. That's bad. Yeah, it's a bad word. Yeah,
it is a bad word.
I was just reading that on Sara Prout. She said that's one of the words that we shouldn't say is should. Yeah,
that's right.
Has a lot of shame in it. So
a lot of shame. And I have my clients know. As soon as we start, that word is out the door every time they say it. Let's refrain. So
that's great. Good reminder.
Yes. We jump into questions.
All right, we're gonna give it to you now. You ready?
I think so.
I love throwing on the spot. I do this to Lindsay all the time. So we have a couple that are live questions right now, and I'm going to jump to those.
Okay.
And the first one that came through is from Jackie. She's actually on Elsa's board. Love Jackie. She's worked with kids for years doing RIE method, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
She said in particular dealing with some negative attention seeking with her niece. And she wants to know just some insights on how you might deal with children who are using, this is the way I'm going to say this, bad behavior to seek attention.
Well, this brings us to the iceberg. So children who are using bad behavior, quote unquote, because I don't like the word good and bad, but are behaving in ways that doesn't seem like ways we want to encourage, let's call it, then we need to look at what that behavior is communicating. So if it's communicating that this particular child needs attention, then we need to go about the attention giving in a different way. So rather than look at giving attention for the negative behavior, talk with the child. Is there something that you need that's causing you to behave in this way? Let's talk about how I can help you and how I can support you. And so, it's the elephant in the room. We can't ignore it. If a child needs more attention than what they're getting, well, how do we fill that child's cup? So, that's the key element. In order to get rid of that behavior that doesn't seem appropriate or whatever the case might be, the attention has to be given to fill that child up. Every child has a meter, so to speak, within them, like a love meter, or you can call it a container or a cup. And that needs to be full each and every day, or filled each and every day. So when it's not, we're gonna have opportunities to see the child behave in ways that we don't really particularly choose. And we hope the child doesn't choose too. So looking at giving attention to the positive things that we can whenever we can with a child such as this, any child really, and also discussing the negative behaviors too. I see that you're having a tough time. What is it that you need right now? How can I support you and help you? So name it, not run from it, name it. I see you're having a tough time because of how you're acting. What is it that you need? Do you just need a hug? Do you need some more love? You can just ask me for that. If you need a hug, let's just talk about hug time. So you see, you're trying to shift the child from knowing that this type of behavior is going to get us to show up with a lot of attention. I had a child that got a lot of attention from negative behavior. I'm very familiar with it. I fell into that trap, sadly. It was a long time ago before I knew better. So Jackie, I hope that's helpful.
I think too, like in Jackie's situation, where I know there's a lot of women in the house who are loving on Lily, if that is the case and this child's getting lots of conscious attention, then perhaps maybe there is something going on where they're not feeling well, or like that's why you get down and you ask a lot of questions to find out if it's not related to lack of attention, what is it? What's there?
Right. And the opposite of that is perhaps getting angry with the child or disciplining the child. And that doesn't help you to learn where the child is coming from and how you can support that child with compassion and empathy so that the child can move away from those feelings, whatever it might be. And it could be a million things. The iceberg is a great resource, but it's just a small little sample of all the things that can be going on within our children that we need to try to tackle as investigators in their lives.
So good.
I in particular have I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and so the 2-year-old is all about the bad behavior right now. And with Atlas, when we worked with you last time, we of course had some of these issues, and I can say that I personally found it really helpful to use these practices and to start being really more mindful about being proactive rather than reactive. And the more attention I gave to Atlas consciously, almost all of these symptoms and things that were going on, behavioral issues, were gone. It just had a lot to do with time.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Every single child in this world, every adult, including probably the 3 of us we can admit to, we all want to be seen, heard, and valued. So, a child at a very young age can't communicate that. Most children don't communicate that. But the attention, the compassion, the togetherness, the connectedness are so important in giving this child or any child these three messages. I see you, I hear you, and you matter.
So good.
Oh, that's what we want to hear too.
That's right. We all do. We all strive for that. So, we're no different. We're no different as adults. So why would we not give our children that attention?
And I love how you added really focusing and honing in on what they're doing good, that behavior, because in society today with teachers and everyday life, they're bombarded with negativity and putting them down. And so it's kind of shifting the perspective from the negative to a more productive, positive perspective with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you're struggling. Right. So if you're struggling with your child, it's even more important to point out the good that you see. And I use that word very loosely, the positive, to really focus on that, because what you focus on grows. And the more you have your attention on the positive things that you're seeing, the more you're going to see more of that. If you do the opposite, plan on seeing more of that. So where do you want to put your energy?
Yeah, and it's labeling. So they're attaching what you're saying to them as a part of them, and you just really want to be mindful.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Our next question from Jennifer, I believe Sara's sister, is how to deal with hormone changes with a preteen.
Just have them move out for a little while and come back when they're all done. It's funny. I just wrote a blog about that not too long ago about, the teenager. The teenager is like an alien moving into your home, but, a loving and important alien, we'll call them. But they change from moment to moment, day to day. So as such, you need to be showing up with your best self, your light shining on, lots of compassion, lots of empathy. So for these children that are going through the preteen and teen years, a lot of what's happening is confusion for them, uncertainty for them. They go through the stage of wanting you and needing you, and then not wanting you and perhaps hating you, which is, all part of the process of this role we play. And so the more compassionate you can be to them and with them, the better. If they're rude one day, it's their moods. We can be rude too. So they're human beings trying to navigate this really difficult time when life is just chaotic. They're changing. They don't get it. They're confused. Just be there with them and for them. So, if we look at it as, oh, my teenager's so moody, I can't stand it. And we do want them to move out of the house. I was just joking, but that sets us up for creating more of an energy, battle with this person. Right. So if we show up saying, I get this, I was there. I mean, that's the other thing, parents, is remember, we were 8, we were 10, we were 12, we were 15. We didn't just show up as adults on this planet. Right. And so, I know for myself, if I take myself back to when I was a child, yikes. I was probably every parent's nightmare. And I mean that. My mother will attest to that. So I was hormonal. I was, annoying and nagging and demanding and all of the things that we see in our kids. And maybe some of you were too. So just be compassionate. Imagine how far that will go. Don't react to them, but pause and think, what's going on for my child right now? Oh, it could be, hormones, moods, the age, the stage. And just let things go that would normally trigger you. Remember where they're coming from.
I think a big part of that, what you're saying, is to really respect them as a human. Yeah. So her response was, she just said, he thinks it's funny when I try to talk to him about it. And I think that also maybe it's like the mom's son, and that's uncomfortable. So maybe dad could talk to him about it, or information we could leave for our kids to understand what's happening on
a pamphlet on their pillow. Or, I don't know how that got there. Sure. You could bring, I think one of the things that I heard you say was how she talks with him about it. And so when we come to talk with our children about it, what comes to my mind is, are we talking, and this is not to insult anybody, at them, where we want them to hear about, oh, you're just changing and the hormones, and it appears to a child as a lecture. If we come to this with curiosity and we show up saying, wow, I'm curious what's going on. You're hitting these years. What do you think's happening? You see, it's a whole different ballgame, because as soon as our children feel like we're lecturing, even if we're trying to, explain the birds and the bees and, moods and hormones and what might be happening, the first 5 words, the kid's kind of sizing us up. And then the volume, it's down to either nothing or you've been tuned out.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to hear it. And did we? I know I didn't want to hear lecture, and I was lectured a lot. So you tune us out.
Yeah.
So if your child is not listening to you or pushing back, don't look at the child as, oh, this child has a problem. They're not listening. I need to do something different, to educate them. Say, what am I bringing to this conversation that might not be sitting well with my child? How can I come about this in a different way? Ooh, let me be curious and see what my child knows about, the changes in their body and hormones and how they play a role. That might be more of an interesting conversation for both parties. Right? Let's see what the child knows. I'm always surprised when parents, I'm pleasantly surprised when parents actually use the conversation to be curious. And then they come back to me and they say, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I learned from this beautiful child in front of me. Children are brilliant. Trust that they have some knowledge they're not sharing with you because you're not curious. Be curious. Don't be a lecturer.
Yeah. There's a quote that says, get curious, not furious. I have that as an alarm on my phone.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. In general, about life,
Yeah.
any change or any transition or anything that comes up, we get curious to see where the lesson is in this or what we have to learn in it instead of furious has helped me a lot.
Sure.
I think a lot of the quotes that can help us parents, like, is there like a little small rhyme we can say to each other? And maybe that one will help.
Yeah, I think whatever mantra works for you, use it. Post it all over the place.
Everywhere. So one of the next questions will be kind of piggybacking off of that one. And this has to do with nagging and yelling. So what are some tips you might have for parents? Let's focus more on parents' behavior than the kids' behavior with this. What can parents do to communicate better, more effectively?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. Parents always say kids don't listen. And so that's why we nag, right? Because we don't think our kids are listening.
Right.
So the first thing is parenting is about the parent. If your children aren't listening, look at yourself. What is it that I need to do differently so that I can communicate in a different way, with my child? Obviously, if the child has a hearing issue or something like that, that's a different story. But raising respectful listeners, which is also something I've been talking about a lot lately, is all about how we communicate. So nagging, does it work? Does it work? In my opinion, no. So by the time we've said the same thing 2 or 3 times, the volume completely off, kids not listening, if they even were. But we're also creating a stir in ourselves. The energy that we have is starting to go south, and we're not really happy usually when we have to nag a child. So look at how you're speaking with your child. One of the things that I always suggest to parents is when you go to ask a child something or, yell from a different room, where is your child? If you're downstairs and your child's upstairs, have you any clue what your child is doing while you're yelling, get down, the bus is here, whatever the case may be, or your laundry's on the floor? They're busy. They're not sitting waiting for your call, right? Oh, mom might nag me in a moment, so I need to be available. They're busy. And just as when we're busy, we might be texting, we might be talking on the phone, we might be reading a recipe, whatever we might be doing, doing our work, we can't hear our children necessarily, or only half hear our children. They don't hear us. So it's not that children don't want to listen to what we're saying. It's that we're not always communicating in a way that serves them. So go to your child. Instead of yelling from downstairs to upstairs or one room to the other 5 times, take the steps and save yourself the energy, right, of going to your child and speaking to your child at your child's eye level. So if your child's sitting on the floor, get down on the floor and make sure you have that child's attention, as opposed to hovering over the child, which, makes them feel lesser than. Get on their level. If they're busy doing something, get their attention first. I mean, my kids used to come and they'd interrupt me while I was like sending an email or, deep in thought. And instead of trying to listen or pretending, I would say, you know what, let me just finish this thought right now. And then I would love to give you my full attention because I want to hear what you have to say. And the same thing is true of our children. If they're busy in a game or something that they're doing that's important, we have to respect that.
Yeah.
So raising respectful listeners, which I'm going to call it, moving away from nagging, is really about how do you bring your conversation to your child in a way that your child can hear you. Now, the next part of this is, if you do this and you're still struggling, then I highly recommend sitting with your child or children and having a conversation and ask them, whatever the problem is, when we're getting ready in the morning and it's time to catch the bus and I try to get your attention so we can get out the door on time, I don't seem to be doing well with that. What would you suggest? Not you're a problem, you're not ready, but it's not working for me how I'm trying to help, and I must be needing some support and guidance from you. So I'm curious, what do you think I can do differently that would help you get out the door in the morning?
That's
or
so powerful.
Get down to dinner or get dressed or, get your teeth brushed. Everything can be handled in this way.
I read a long time ago that you can ask your kids for the solution. That often they'll come, say their siblings are fighting over a toy. Well, what might you do? And my kids, Atlas is amazing. He'll have all sorts of ideas on how he would handle it. And it has helped. We actually, our last video that we just did on conscious communication, we did a skit, we did a scene. And one really important thing, even with adults, is to make sure your body language is in sync. So you're not hovering over them. And sometimes I'll even go lower when I'm trying to come from the heart chakra and to really be heard that this is something that I'm feeling. And that's, I think, a natural instinct with kids. You get down to their eye level. And the other thing I noticed about being late is they can usually trace it back to the parents. If the kids are late and the parents blaming the kids, usually the parent has a tendency to be late on their own. And it has helped me a lot to be mindful of that practice. Am I yelling when I don't really need to yell yet? Like, I'm not even ready to get out the door. And I'm like, guys, you have whatever. So being mindful of, like, why are we really doing this? Is it our own lateness?
Yeah. Well, and I think you hit two very important things. Where are we operating from is a question we have to ask ourselves often. What is this saying about me? What is my lesson here to learn through this challenge, this whatever it might be? And really reflect on yourself, because everything we do in parenting is about us as parents. The children that come through us or to us, as Shefali says, are here to help us grow. And I'm an example of that, because I have one incredible awakener, my oldest child, incredible awakener. So I'd still be asleep if it weren't for her. So, and so I have her to thank. She says, Mom, why couldn't you have been a parent coach when I was young? And you are the reason that I'm a parent coach now. So we would never have been here. It would have been a whole different story. God knows what that would have looked like. But I think, it's really important to look at yourselves. And there was something else that you touched on, and now it's escaped me.
One thing I love to do is when I am triggered, I will take a moment by myself and I'll either journal or breath work or meditate and ask why am I triggered? What is triggering me? And really try and go inward in my own self and figure out where it's coming from. And then go back to one of my children later on from a more balanced awareness and not from me being emotionally heightened for something that's triggering me. And not taking that out on my children and taking responsibility for that trigger, that this is me. They're simply a mirror for what's going on in my inner world.
Yeah. And that is great for two reasons. One is you're modeling to your children how it is to take ownership for our own behavior as human beings. Just because we're adults and we've lived a longer life doesn't mean that we're less responsible or less human. So it shows them that we're not these, pedestal parents that don't do anything wrong. And it teaches them that they can also own their own mistakes, so to speak, or triggers or whatever it might be. And I think the second part of that is triggers come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And I like to call them the staple buttons that we wear, you know, those big red. I think that's really important to keep in mind as parents. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me?
A little bit. I think our doorbell has a camera, and I think it stole the internet for a second, but we're all good now.
Oh,
We can see you again.
Yes, but we didn't.
oh, okay.
3 seconds of that.
Uh,
Are you there?
yeah. Well, so I was just saying how important it is to. Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what's going on.
It's a little bit.
But this is all a lesson for all of us, whatever it might be. Okay.
Mhm.
So those triggers are on the outside for us to take a look at, basically, is my point.
Yeah. Absolutely. Next question.
So we have a few more. So some words that we can use. Can you give us specific words that might help us in communicating to our kids, like switching how we come across just with language?
So the first word is curious. I'm curious how you're feeling right now. I'm curious what's going on. I'm curious, you know, what happened today in school if they come home really agitated. I'm a big fan of that. Or I'm wondering, because you can't use curious all day long, 24/7. Your child's going to wonder what the heck is going on. So switch it up a little bit. I think the second thing is asking, how can I help you right now? We're so quick to want to fix or solve. So 2 children are fighting, as you mentioned earlier. How can I help you guys right now? Knowing that your children have incredible brilliance, allow them to shine. Ask them questions. You know, what would you like to do? What choice would you like to make? So a lot of the language is stepping out of your need to be in control, right? Because none of us are. We're not in control of our children. We can't control every move they make. All we can do is control what we bring to the table. And so I try to encourage parents to ask more than tell. If you find yourself constantly telling your children to do this or to do that, or how to fix something or trying to fix it yourself, then take a step back and look at how can I be the usher and the guide by offering my children an opportunity to master whatever's going on in their own life, or to help me solve, or to help me fix. So I think, you know, it's really not so much words as role. Think of yourself as a collaborator with your child, you know, as equal partners in this relationship called life. And with that, think of them as human beings with a lot to offer the conversation. So empower them to be part of the conversation. So it's about letting go. Letting go of our own needs and agendas and expectations, and honing in on who is this beautiful child in front of us, and how can I engage and connect with this child and help this child to be part of every conversation, for the most part, almost every.
Yes.
There's a practice I do with Atlas that just helps him so much, and now Ryan's kind of getting it too, is I let him be leader. This is what makes me think of it. And you can do this with any age. Like, you pick today, you tell me what you want to do, and just go for that ride. And Atlas and I will do it. You know, when we're at the park, I play whatever he tells me to do. If I go up, he says up, I go up, down, whatever it is. And the light that comes out of him, and then the respect that he gives me, is just so instantly seen and felt by him and each other when we do that. So giving them an hour or a whole day, if you can give a half day to your kid, depending on what age it is, to let them be the conductor, might be some physical practices that we do in that.
I think that's a great idea, and can work in the kitchen too, you know? Why don't you pick what we're having for dinner? Why don't you make the dinner, you know? Or anything. There's so many ways. If you play a game, don't tell the child how Monopoly is played. Play it their way.
No, I love that.
You know? So whatever that looks like, we find we have to teach them the right way. There is no right way.
Right. Oh, it's so true.
Yeah.
So climb into their world. So it's not even you're the conductor. You can take it a step further and just say, what would you like to play? And just be a participant. Any way it looks in their world, because their world is the world to be in.
True that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the one I'm sure you've gotten a lot. It's something I personally struggle with or did struggle with. Work-life balance with kids.
That's a big one.
Like, and I think something that comes up for me that might be attached to this is our devices. When we are on a device in front of our children, whether it's work or not, I think it kind of also segues into that. Tips.
Yeah, so this is really where values are important to determine, what does your work schedule look like? What do you need to do when you're, so if you leave the house for work, you go somewhere else, that's your work life. When you come home, what do you need to do that has, attachment to work? We are very connected to devices, and not always because we need to be. I can attest to that. So, we all fall into that trap. We're all, it's the nature of the beast, right? It is devised to connect us, to create that attachment, that need, that dependency on the device. And so think about what your needs actually are with work at home. And if you don't need to connect, look at emails, respond, whatever, then don't. And so you create that space then in your home life to disconnect. And it has to be intentional. Otherwise, we're just, creatures of habit. And the habit is, let me check. I heard a ding. Turn off all the noise. Even if you have to work in the evening with your kids, turn off the noise when you're with your kids. The next part of this is, I tell parents, the first 15 minutes of reentry, yours or theirs. So if you're already home and they reenter from school or wherever it is they are, great. If you're reentering their home with a sitter or whoever, that's the first 15 minutes that are really important to create reconnection. And so spend that time actually bonding and being with your child without your phone in your hand, without looking at the mail. I had a client maybe a year or so ago, and she had young children, and they would come home from school, and she said to me, Sue, I don't understand. Like, they sit down at the kitchen counter, and I create a snack, and I'm on the opposite side of the island, and they turn on the TV immediately. She said, why do they do that? And I said, well, what is it that you're doing? And anyway, to make a long story as short as I can, she was sorting the mail, looking at her phone. And I said, well, you're not really present. So if you expect them to talk with you when you get home, those things must be put away. So the next day I said, make the snack, put the snack out, and sit down next to them with nothing in front of you. No TV went on. They actually engaged. And so that was the routine going forward. So kids are so smart. They know when you're preoccupied.
Yeah.
So if you want to create the space with them, and like I said, the first 15 minutes is really an important time, be there fully present. Because between work and life, there's, work and home, there's very little time, right? So the time that we do have, we need to make the most of and be fully present for our children, with our children, and in our children's life and world.
It's a really good practice, teaching them so much more than just connecting with them, but it teaches them a lot. And that is actually going to take us to the next, which is around devices. And I did learn recently that if we allow our child, same thing with us, to walk in the door and immediately have the device, whether it's TV or the phone, what we're doing is basically stopping the trait of learning how to have delayed gratification. So the level of patience is not learned that you would like your kids to learn. So there are some, maybe in that would be, wait 15 minutes for them as well. That's like a space that for both of you, there's other things happening from that lesson that we might not be aware of.
Well, I think those are, again, values, really putting values into place. I mean, I think instant gratification is a societal issue right now, and it certainly doesn't help our children learn to be more resilient and, more emotionally stable and connected to themselves. They learn to expect immediate things. So it's really about having values. If your values are, when we first come home, we have a snack, we don't use any devices. If you are one to create boundaries around devices, which I recommend, whatever your values are, create a boundary around it. Talk with your children, have a discussion, even young children. TV is also, a type of screen. and a type of entertainment. So you really can share with them that that time is between 7 and 8, or between 6 and 5, or 6 and 7, and whatever you want that to be. And other times are for other things. When you give them the space to be creative and do other things, and they know that's what's in front of them, they'll find it. We've become such a society that's focused on, here's the iPad, here's TV, here's the this, here's the that. And we don't give the children as much time to be creative in their own right. You don't have to be the playmate necessarily, but watch what your children do when they have the space that's not around technology, to be themselves, to be creative, to find their way, to be bored. Boredom is a gift for everyone to find what's within.
And a lot of, there's so many studies out there that are going to tell you, the research has been done, if we're allowing too much time, especially with the younger ones, it has been linked with things like ADHD, and it does change your brain. So on a physical level and emotional level, there's lots of reasons to create a balance.
I think that's why we're seeing way more ADHD and ADD, is because years ago when I was studying all of this, the studies showed that the brain doesn't have a chance to process. The processing centers at young ages aren't actually kicking in, where a child learns to process something on a screen, whether it's TV or a YouTube video, whatever it might be, for young children and older children, because these images are coming so fast at them that they see one, then they see another, that their brain is not processing. So our children's processing centers are delayed because of this, and that's creating all sorts of other issues. So, you know, if you do allow your children to watch things at young ages, look at how quick the screen moves, how much stimulus is there for them, and how you might be able to find programs like the Flintstones or something when I was young. But, you know, programs like Barney. You know, Barney doesn't move fast. Some of these programs that are slower scaled for children.
PBS app now, and they have
PBS.
really educational ones for kid appropriate.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So our next question is, how can we support our children in their growth and evolution without trying to control too much? So for instance, this was a question that was asked, but this is a big one for me too. My son, he just started 6th grade a few months ago, so he's transitioning from elementary to middle school, and his grades, keeping up with all the classes, there were a few of his grades that were getting down into the C's, and I could easily be like, okay, I'm going to help you with your homework, but he wasn't getting it, and I was there to help him, so I was hindering him. So how can we support them in going through what they need to go through to learn and to grow into who they're meant to be without controlling or interfering too much?
I think that's a great question. And again, we're so focused on their grades as the measure of who they are, how they're achieving, where will they go, what will they be when they're in their 20s. And that's not the most important thing in the here and now. It's not the most important thing, period. So I think allowing yourself to look at your child, look at your child's strengths and gifts. What are they good at? What classes do they love? Where do they excel? You know, maybe they love astronomy and they really want to learn more about that. Help them also to see what it is they need. So for example, you know, your particular child, you might say, you know, how do you feel about it? Does your child see their grades?
Yeah, I try and get him, I emphasize to him that he is not his grades, and he was getting caught up because his teachers were putting a lot of emphasis on the grades. So I've gotten him into the habit of not checking as often as he was, because there's just a little website and you go on and you can see instantly.
So what we can do as parents is focus on what they're learning, because it's process, not outcome. And the process is, you know, what's going on in English? Oh, you know, tell me what you're learning there. What do you like about it? So you engage with your child in the educational world. They're learning, what do you find difficult? And this is where you learn where they might be struggling or where they might find the challenge. Perhaps they're not good at math. oh gosh, is there anything with the math that you would want to do differently to help yourself? And again, it's process. Yes, I'd like to go see the teacher maybe for extra help or whatever it might be. But when we become concerned about their grades, just like everybody else, just like the outer world, they are going to be stressed, and it's not going to help them to thrive in a way that serves them. Some kids are better at math, and some kids are better at sciences. Some kids, like art. And this is not who they are. This is just about their learning and their interest. Every child learns differently. So one of the big things that I'm trying to work on, among other things, is how we teach our children. So the educational system is not always working well for your child in teaching your specific child in a way your child learns. So, for parents listening, if your child is not learning in a way that your school teaches, then you might want to talk with your child about the learning process and maybe look at ways or other places that your child might learn in a way that serves them. And this is a big problem throughout the US, is that, we're actually trying to teach the teachings, not teach the child. And so a lot of children that fall by the wayside, which is why we find a lot of micro schools showing up. A lot of people are homeschooling more and more. It's becoming huge. And not just one child, they have 4 or 5 children they're homeschooling. I mean, I have clients that do this, and I'm like, oh, I just, more power to you. I couldn't do it. And some of us can't, and that's okay too. So, look at what your child needs in a learning environment from a process, not an outcome. The grades don't matter. What matters is how your child learns, how your child grows. Culturally, you can educate them, exposing them to different things, to museums, to art, to various things they might have an interest in, not shoving them into it, but exposing them and seeing how they enjoy it. So again, it's a process. It's not about the outcome.
Yeah. My mother was really good about taking us, we would play hooky days. I try to do this and go on field trips to things or go out and about. Or she had us traveling all the time. And I learned so much from traveling and experiencing other cultures. There's just a lot to learn without trying to teach, just being present in the actual day-to-day of life and doing things like that. Museums, another way to connect. And things
it's beautiful.
The way that we teach it is just so challenging, but there are places that are using art now as a tool to help us to really understand some of the harder subjects. So there are resources out there for a lot of these courses that are challenging.
Yeah. And see your child's strength. See your child's strengths. Focus on the strengths. What does your child have? What are they good at? How do they thrive? Where do they thrive? What creates them to thrive?
So we have 10 minutes left. And I know one big one that's actually come up a lot lately is co-parenting. And when I think this question actually was kind of touched on a little bit last time, when you are co-parenting with someone where there's a challenge or disagreements or, the worlds are so different in this house to this house, what can you give us a little on tips to dealing with this situation?
It's hard. It's very hard. I've been there myself. Every parent is on a different piece of the continuum of consciousness. Some aren't even on on that continuum at all. And that's okay. We're all different human beings, and, we'll all join hopefully when we're ready. So, I think parents have to come together in a respectful way in co-parenting, to respect each other, agree to disagree, but somehow or other work through how we can move best for the child. I'm divorced when my kids were young, and somebody once gave me the advice that it's all about the kids now. I will never forget this. It's not about you. It's not about him. It's not about your anger, your frustration, or anything else. It's all about the kids now. And so when we co-parent, if there's not a win, there's not a lose. It's about how we can bring attention to what's best for the child. So those conversations that are difficult, where you're on different pages, keep bringing up what's best for the child. What do you think would be best for the child and why? Not your agenda for your child, but truly for the child. And, sometimes it's helpful to have help, to have outside help to support.
Mhm.
The court seems to be sending co-parenting classes my direction these days. So I'm working with a lot of couples that are either in transition to divorce, separated, but really struggling, where the court said, you've got to get some help. And I think once you do, you really see how it changes the perspective, because everybody loves the children. We all love the children, but we forget that this is the only thing that matters now in our relationship. It's not our love or hate for the other. It's not our anger. You did this, I did that. None of that matters. So put the past behind you and encourage the other person to put the past behind them too. And just deal with this moment. Be present for this moment. What decision do you need to make that matters for your child?
It's really good advice. What happens if they don't? And they're just not responsive. They're using the kids in the middle of it. How can we, as our own independent sovereign being, cope with that? Like, what are some tools and tips that we might be able to do just in accepting?
It's tough, because this is something that does happen. I think it happens more often than we'd like to admit. And I think that in some cases, of parents that I work with, where I just work with one, I recommend they talk with the child. So there are situations where you have to be your child's guide and supporting the child, not against the other parent, but really depends on the situation. So I'm having trouble giving you, some good examples, but knowing that perhaps the treatment of the child on the other side is different than yours and may not be, as loving, compassionate, or empathetic. Just telling the child you're always here for the child, and that every household is different, not better or worse. So you have to find neutral terms to describe, but that anything they want to talk about, you're always there to listen. And, I always tell couples, do not badmouth the other parent.
Right. So
that is the worst thing you could do, no matter what you feel. Don't say anything negative about the other parent, because you're not looking for your child's loyalty.
Right.
And kids, this one couple I'm working with right now, the poor child is acting out in ways that are disruptive and controlling and manipulative, because she sees the battle. And she doesn't know which side to align with. So from a child's point of view, they're confused. Mommy and daddy are no longer in the same home. You've got to work together to make it as peaceful as possible. You're still a family. You're just a family living in different places. So keep in mind that the effects you're having on your child, every move you make, can be catastrophic and detrimental. Well, maybe not catastrophic. We'll call it detrimental. Or can really raise that child's vibration, energy, love for self, and, understanding in the world. There's a lot of families that live separately, lots of families. So, live as peaceful as you can. And if you can't, I highly recommend getting help. Don't sit with this turmoil between you for the sake of your child.
It can help a lot.
So Sue, trailing on that, tell us where we can find you and how people can connect with you.
Thank you. So I'm trying to remember where I am right now. I'm involved in a lot of things, but the best place to find me is Sue Decaro. Is Decaro Parent Coaching is my website, or Sue Decaro on Facebook. And I also have a private group that I think you both know about called Conscious Parents Thriving Kids, as well as a podcast called Conscious Parents Thriving Kids. And I'm here for anyone. It's a delight to support people who are really trying to raise their kids more consciously, in times like this and space like this, as well as professionally to support you from a coaching standpoint. So come join the group, post questions in there. It's a really engaged environment where people really try to help each other. And, I lead as a coach in there to support everyone as much as I can.
So on the Spotify for your podcast, that's Sue Decaro, or is it Decaro Parenting?
No, so the podcast is called Conscious Parents Thriving Kids.
Oh, it is. Okay, same
Same as the Facebook group, Conscious Parents Thriving Kids. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on Podbean.
We'll post links to all of this too. So.
Yeah.
little easier.
And then just Decaro Parent Coaching, just my last name. And, feel free to reach out any way that serves you, because I'm here to help.
Are
To make this a more conscious world for our children.
Yeah, which is our future.
Yeah,
It's our future. Well, they're our present too.
Oh, I'm so thankful for you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Each and every single time I learned so much.
Yeah.
I hope we have you on again. We sent you out to our entire following with our 501c3, and we did a newsletter on our for-profit as well, our holistic health
Thank you.
company. So you're in the newsletter, and hopefully we get you on again.
Let's look to January. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Start the new year out, consciously. How's
Yeah,
that sound?
great time to set new practices.
Yeah,
for sure. Not resolutions, just practices.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, gals.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Everyone.